good morning, good afternoon, and good night.
What's greetings, Earthlings? What up, what up, what up?
That is highly polarized, number one.
They're connected to our present.
Just gonna say, we're gonna run out of Greek, the Greek letters.
That's crazy what he did. He took
That is
the
highly
military out
political,
before he
number
took
two.
the civilians. Who does
And
that?
number three, that it's rooted in a notion
What
of
has he
white
done
privilege.
about police reform in this country? Nothing.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to Unsolicited Genius. I am your curator, Carlton Ennis, and I am with the podcasting yang to my yin, Mo Lockley. On today's show, we will talk about the variances about the Omicron variant, the prime time of HBCU football, and our favorite Christmas movies. We hope to give you something to ponder.
You are listening to Unsolicited Genius.
What up, Mo? What's going on?
Hanging in there, my brother. Just watching a little Sunday night football. The GOAT, Tom Brady's on.
Yeah, man. Who they got? The Saints. I mean, this should be straightforward, I think. The Saints are a bit depleted, so I'm expecting this to be smooth sailing. I need the fantasy points, though, from Godwin. I need
That's
these
all that
points.
matters, right?
That's all that matters at this juncture. All right, so today I'm so happy to welcome our guest, Gyasi Chisley. Just to get it started, I've known this brother over 20 years at this point. We met via our healthcare channels. I was in health administration full-time. Gyasi is in health administration, taking it over, doing a bunch of things. He's a HBCU grad. He's a Michigan grad. He's a Nas fan, and he is a true blue friend. And so glad to have him on the show. So Gyasi, to introduce yourself to our listeners, I told my part, but share them from your perspective. What is your life's craft?
Man, thank you so much. See, I appreciate you. Lifelong friend. So happy to be part of the production. So shout out to you, to Mo. What's up, Mo? And the super producer Joe. Thank y'all so much for having me. Truly appreciate it. Mo, you already set it off, man. So you said Tom Brady, the GOAT. I couldn't agree more. He must have went to a really good school.
Oh man!
What
here
comes
the
about
Michigan
that.
man part. Here's the Michigan man coming out.
Must have went to and graduated from a really good school. Now, all jokes aside, thank y'all so much for the time. Really excited about what we're going to talk about today. Not only is it relevant and germane to society, I think it's poignant to how we in 2021 and go into 2022. So it couldn't be more timely, I think, and cogent to really enforce a lot of things that we need to be talking about. So my life's craft, man, it's really, I have a personal mission statement, Carlton. As you know, you have challenged me to do so, and you challenge me in more ways than one. So I appreciate that. But it's more so really, man, to transform, to disrupt, to have, I think, a healthy perspective of not only society, but of myself, self-awareness, so that I can be the best man, the best Black man, the best person that I can be, really trying to do some transformative things around and within society. So that's what I'm about, man. Healthcare is a vehicle. It's not the end all be all, but it's a vehicle in which I try to affect and impact change. It's certainly been my ministry for more than 25 years now. You know, I think it's a calling. Certainly it's not by way of compensation or anything else that I that I get paid physical compensation, but it's more so, how do I impact and how do I use a platform so that I can speak from my heart to try to, I think, impact the most fundamental industry that is a subset of society in a good way and in a bad way that impacts us all. I think if we don't have healthcare, if we aren't talking about healthcare then shame on us, because it levels the playing field. And I think very strategically, very intentionally, certain aspects, lack of access to healthcare has been upon us for quite some time. So I say all that to say that's why I'm in it. That's why I'm talking about it. That's why we're doing what we're trying to do. And that's why I'm so glad to be here tonight.
Awesome, awesome. I'm glad you said that. It's in particular the part about healthcare being your vehicle. I think I mirror the sentiments as well in terms of what healthcare showed me, just from the business side of it, from the humanitarian aspect of it. So there's so much inherent in healthcare, and then for you and I, healthcare leadership, that I wouldn't trade in for the world. But I think as you articulate in this discussion and previous discussions, and we'll hop into your book in a minute, but you clearly state that there are some problems, and problems that are causing death simply because we aren't creating health. So,
Absolutely.
so with that, all things considered, with a captive audience, what do you want our listeners to know from you?
Muhammad Ali said it best: a man that views the world at 50, and then views the same at 20 has wasted about 30 years of his life. So I am looking at things through a different lens. It's what prompted and preempted a very cathartic experience for me, and then not only writing the book, but going through this year, through the pandemic, through the protests, and through everything else that the country's facing in terms of profit and loss of profit. I think for me too, it's, and I'll go back to hip hop here, and I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but Drake said, losing friends and finding peace sounds like a fair trade to me. So I am looking at things through a different lens and trying to make sure that I'm doing things intentionally. And if I'm, excuse the expression, pissing people off in the process, that's okay, because I can sleep with myself at night. I know exactly what I'm trying to do. I know that if I am ticking some people off, it's probably well due and overdue. And then also, there's a lot of things that I'm trying to make sure that is said that needed to be said long ago. And that's why I think the book is so important. Not necessarily the book itself, the content of the book, but it's more so the context of the book that I'm really trying to promote. So it's been a life's journey, a whirlwind for me over the last, call it 6 or 7 months. Started a new company, doing some other things, which we'll talk about. But there's a lot of things in the works that I think have culminated over the years that I think will have a deep and lasting impact for many generations to come, hopefully. And that's all I'm trying to do. And it's not just me. As you know, I'm working with you. I'm working with a bunch of other friends that I'm happy to call friends. And that's when you know you're at peace too, is that you can do some things with people that you actually love, and not have to do things with people that you have to do things with. So I think there's tremendous value in that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's another beautiful point you make amongst everything, because I guess in what we're doing here on Unsolicited Genius, I love Jonane 100% of the time. Mo 99.99.999, and the feeling is mutual. So yeah, I agree with you. Doing things with people you love is a gift in and of itself. So kudos to you and the members of your team for sure. And I'm glad to be a participant. So
Absolutely.
Your book, Healthy Disruption, The Benefit and Burden of a Black Healthcare Executive in America. Here's the cover. Go get it. Check it out. Not even check it out. Get it, file it, read it, learn from it. Because for me, there's a few things that stood out, and definitely want to talk more about it with you. But you emphasize racism and its permeation throughout the healthcare system, whether it be the corporate environment, whether it be the experience of somebody, a Black person, a Black executive trying to lead within the industry, but also the
Right.
disparities that are impacting people of color, in particular Black people. They're not being served by the system that was set up to serve them. You talk a lot about how I phrase Black power, the HBCUs and the roles that we play in our own future and our own ability to thrive and to have our families flourish. There's a power in us that you reference a lot, in particular that you got from your mom. So definitely want to learn more about that. But then the part that I really, really value from your book is you don't just talk about the problem, you offer solutions, whether it be the 5 Ps that requires that where the problems exist, but then the 7 Cs that you cover. And I'll read them off real quick.
Please do.
So the 7 Cs: culture, consolidation, commercialization, consumerism, coalition building, concept to execution, and control. So you break down those thoughts, ideas, and concepts, but also show when applied to all the stuff that we have going on, but even through the pandemic in healthcare specifically, that there's a path out of what we're dealing with. And so in the spirit of, again, going back to Unsolicited Genius, we're around talking about the problems for sure. What are they? Let's call them out, because you got to see the monster to be able to destroy the monster. But solutions, solutions, solutions. Not that we're right, not that they always will work, but we got to start somewhere. And you don't just start, you give background, history, experience, and knowledge to the things that you're suggesting. So one of the things I wanted to come back to in your book was the term Sankofa. You reference it a lot, and it means go back and get it. Talk about what Sankofa means in your book and what it means for you.
Appreciate you, man. So first off, man, I was remiss in just saying, man, big fat shouts out to you and everybody else for, I finally got an invitation for Unsolicited Genius. So I am so happy to be on the show, man. Just rapping with y'all brothers, man. It's gonna be a wonderful night. And you encapsulated and summarized the book very appropriately. And by the way, thanks for copping a copy. Thanks for even more so reading it.
Still need that autograph though.
About it.
I still need that autograph.
I got you. I got you.
You know,
definitely. And we're seeing a lot of upswing in sales and everything else from Amazon, and giving Bezos more money than he even needs, and some other things. But I think the whole premise of the book is what you just said. It's taking sort of the first 3 chapters, Carlton, of the book, and saying, hey, this is who I am. This is how I was raised. This is why I was called to healthcare in the first place. And then sort of the next chapter saying, okay, this is how it relates to society today. And then the final 2 chapters and saying, hey, this is what we can do to solve it. And it rests on a lot of premises that we've already heard, but gives, I think, credence to how we actually do it. And that concept execution, I think, is huge. Let me answer your question directly, though, and I think it's all centered around Sankofa. I am a big believer in the concept of Sankofa, number one. Number two, it's a concept that my family instilled in me long ago when I was a kid. And number 3, it actually gives, it's exactly what you said it is, Carlton. It means go back and get it. So it rests on the sort of premise of take whatever you have learned, take whatever is in you from your ancestors, from your family, from whoever you are. Bring all of that with you to any problem, any issue, any opportunity, and then actually use that to go get whatever you're trying to achieve. I think it's very spiritual in nature. I think it's what separates Black people from any other race in a good way. And I think it's actual opportunity that we need to use as a catapult, as a springboard, to ensure that A lot of our Black executives are taking that and feeling comfortable, and like you said, empowered to do whatever they need to do to transform healthcare. So goes healthcare, in my mind, so goes the country. So if we've got enough Black executives working together, key concept, working together to actually change the game, change the industry, I think we can actually change society. And it all rests on the whole premise of Sankofa. So if you don't know about Sankofa, there's actually a movie about Sankofa, there's songs about Sankofa, but please Google it whenever you get a chance. I think it's a wonderful concept, and it's actually a concept that a lot of, mind you, white people use for their own ancestry, but it was rooted and based in sort of East Africa, and I learned about it through my mom. So couldn't be more happy and thrilled to actually put that concept into the book. I'm glad that's what you took out of it, and hopefully others will as well.
Yeah, because I, when you talk about applying it to healthcare and Black leadership, Black leaders in healthcare, I'm of the mindset and belief that there is a power, inexplicable, unexplained power, let me say an unexplained power, spirituality connected to our spirit that exists in Black people that over the course of our history here in America has been diminished. Not because
Absolutely.
It can't come back, not because it wasn't there or it's lost. It's that in bringing us over from our motherland and everything that transpired in that early slavery in our country, I believe they underestimated the power in what they took and what they got over here. And so used all types of psychological warfare and resource limitation. And, Mo can go down a list of things that they've done. But ultimately, what that convinced us of is a diminishment of our power. We know the athleticism, we see it on the field, we talk about that. We hear it in the music, we're going to talk about that. But ultimately, in that same power exists in everything: our creativity, our artistry, our ability to lead, our ability to bridge gaps, our ability to heal, our ability to learn, to teach. Just go down the list. That there's a power in us that we can do anything feasible on this earth, but it's a matter of going back and getting it, because it was always there.
It was always there.
So amongst everything, I think that's, it doesn't totally encompass your book because you provide a lot of perspective and information that's valuable, things I hadn't thought about. But when I think about the energy that I get from your book, like what I feel as I read it, it definitely hinges on Sankofa. So
yeah, man. I think from my perspective, you're absolutely right. Just to chime in here, there's more peace than people would think I just studied the peace section of the dictionary, but I didn't. But you look at power, you look at persistence, and you look at prowess. Like they underestimated, to your point, all of those P's that our people, I think, innately have. Now, it's been through a lot of stress and strain that I think those three P's have emerged to kind of surface over these last few years. And I think we're well equipped to use those three P's to catapult us to a different stratosphere. And there's a lot of things that we need to work out. However, that being said, if we take that, and I love that word, if we take that energy, if we take that history, if we take those concepts in the spirit of Sankofa and understand what that means, I think we can pretty much accomplish anything. And that includes those C's that you just kind of rattled off too, in terms of, and the main one is in control. And I'm not saying, hey, we want to control the country, whatever, but we have long term been deprived of a lot of things in this country. And it's our opportunity. I think this is our moment to do something, and something pretty big. So, which we'll talk about, I'm sure.
I mean,
Well,
they're the healthcare experts, so I'm just listening and learning. I appreciate you, gentlemen. But you know, to Carlton's point, I mean, you know, and he says these things have come in the last few years. Yeah, it was because when they robbed Black people over here, they robbed Black people of their culture. They robbed them of their name. They didn't even let them have birth certificates. Most Black people back then had no clue how old they were or what date they were born. You know, I was doing an exercise with my students, and I told them to take out their phones and Google their last names. And they Googled their last names, and most of them have American last names, you know, not from Africa, not from the motherland. And they would look up their last name and they're like, I'm not Irish, I'm not British. and they were just shocked because I was explaining to them that your last name, for the good majority of you, if you're not connected to the continent of Africa, like your parents recently immigrated from there, your last name is really a last name that was given from some plantation owner to your ancestors that's been passed down forever, you know, and that's powerful. Like, you know, what you guys are saying about, like, Black people are the most resilient people in the history of the world.
yes.
And they're also the most forgiving, almost to a detriment. Like the forgiveness part is almost to a detriment. But, you know, they robbed Black people of their culture for 400 plus years, you know, in my mind. And it's still, like you guys are saying, still somehow we find a way to connect to that and express that culture and bring it to life. And it still drives a lot of us. And, you know, healthcare, I mean, you guys know this being in the field. I mean, they've robbed Black people of adequate healthcare from the beginning of time. Like the access to medicine, the access to quality doctors. I mean, I live in Atlanta, which is a Black Mecca in my mind. You know, when you come to Atlanta, it feels like a Black Mecca. You see all these Black professionals in healthcare and all kinds of industries, music, all of this. But if you go down to Grady Memorial Hospital, there's a plaque out there that'll show you that Black people didn't have access to equal healthcare in a Black city till 1967. Till 1967. And it's just a small plaque, but if you take the time to read it, you'll realize, like, and I completely agree with you. You know, when we talk about healthcare, we're not just talking about the body, we're talking about the mind, mental health. You know, me and Carlton were actually talking about this earlier. If you don't have quality access to physical healthcare, to mental healthcare, how can you live a fruitful and productive life?
And I think, Mo, you hit the nail on the head. I think it's intentional. I think early on, and this is something that we talk about in the book, is that, you know, you guys remember from back in the 90s, the character from Bad Boy, the Mad Rapper. Tell him why you mad, son. Tell him why you mad. So we're explaining to people why we're mad, because of things, as Mo just espoused, or very eloquently espoused, what has gone on. And we talk about slavery to Reconstruction, which was a very, very interesting time, which we talk about slavery sometimes in this country, which, as this country says, is the original sin of this country. Not only original, but the most heinous and heinous act that anybody could ever witness or endure. And then, which is still, we're still enduring. But then we talk about Reconstruction, which was a very interesting time in terms of how we started to gain access and glean insight into how this country works. So we started to gain we Black people started to gain the system in terms of capitalism and everything else. And the maldistribution of everything else that happened during Reconstruction was apparent to us. So we started running for office. We started doing other things. That's where the whole concept of 40 acres and a mule came from, was during Reconstruction. That was stripped from us deliberately, strategically, and intentionally, because they knew that would give us access to greater things, hospitals, businesses, those kinds of things. And that's exactly where everything sort of took a turn, and Jim Crow sort of reared its ugly head. And we started to feel the impact of, first of all, not having access to even healthcare. That's the first thing that they took from us during Reconstruction. The very first thing. from a Jim Crow standpoint, it wasn't, I can't eat at a restaurant. It wasn't, I can't have a drink at the bar. It was more so, I can't get into the hospital to get care, as Mo was saying. So that was what robbed from us from the very beginning. And then it snowballed, or actually I should say, continued or proliferated itself from that. So just to get a little bit more color, I couldn't agree more that this is the kind of conversation we need to be having. And this is why healthcare is so fundamental to every aspect, every living aspect, to every American in this country.
Well, I mean, what he's saying about Reconstruction is absolutely. During Reconstruction, Black people were not only running for office, they were winning. Like, they were winning elections in the South and being elected into Congress. And and let's be honest, white people couldn't stand that. So the reaction to that was what he said is the Jim Crow South, where you take away the voting, you take away the healthcare, you take away the education, and you cripple the people so they have no access to be able to make their lives better or more fruitful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, think about it, CIMO, just to interject there. The interesting juxtaposition that is happening and occurring right now. What's happening in Georgia? You live right there, Mo. Like, what's happening in Georgia right now? The Voting Act, the Voting Rights Act. It is in danger and endangerment of actually being repealed. So the fact that all of this is sort of coming full circle in a bad way, I think is startling, interesting, and sad at the same time. So just to add that point.
I want to keep our train moving in this direction, because in the headlines, and our headliner for today is the Omicron variant. And as we talk about the system and what it's done and things that seem to come back around again, in the book, you referenced the one healthcare debacle that we often reference with the Tuskegee experiments, and what that did and continues to do in terms of Black people trusting the healthcare system. And so you had them intentionally making us sick, not giving us the help we needed, where we all are collectively sick, so to speak, in the pandemic. Statistically, we're seeing that Blacks still aren't getting equal care. There's no equity in the care that we're receiving, because we make up 12% of the population, but we represent, I think the number last I saw was like 34% of the deaths related to COVID. So there's a discrepancy there. And now with Omicron, are we seeing a virulent version as to the likes of Delta, where we anticipate more people dying? At minimum, what Dr. Fauci said is that it's extraordinarily more transferable than other strains. So ultimately what we're saying is that people are going to get it. But my question to the two of you for discussion is really, will we get past this pandemic?
Mo, you want to start? Go ahead, brother.
To me, you say, when will it end, Carlton? I don't think it's going to end, because people are not willing to sacrifice for others. It's all about, we have truly become the me society. It's all about me, what I'm comfortable doing, what I want to prove like, you literally have people now that are like, if a vaccinated person gets hospitalized with COVID, they're like, you see, I told you the vaccine doesn't work. Who told you couldn't get hospitalized if you got vaccinated? You got people like Aaron Rodgers, and me and Carlton talked about this, and full disclosure, I can't stand Aaron Rodgers for what he did. It's not because he didn't get vaccinated, though. It's because he stood up there and gave misinformation, and he knows millions of people listen to him. Because unfortunately in this country, this is how people get news now, from Aaron Rodgers and Joe Rogan. Like, my man G has wrote a book on the healthcare system, but people listen to Joe Rogan give health advice, who has no business giving any health advice. And because people are lazy, they don't want to educate themselves, Carlton. They don't want to put in the proper research to see that the vaccine is safe, that nothing. I'm vaccinated. Carlton, I believe you're vaccinated. I can't speak for G, but
I am.
I'm here. I'm healthy. I feel fine. And I had COVID, and I was messed up. I couldn't even walk up my steps. I'd walk up the steps, and I would just crumble to the ground because I felt like I climbed Mount Everest. So when it came time to the vaccine, you know, I wanted to do it for my students. I wanted to do it for my family. I wanted to do it for the elders in my life. I have people that I'm close with that in my family that are cancer survivors. God forbid, like, I don't take every step possible to protect them. It really had nothing to do with me because I know I could survive COVID. I did it once, you know, but people won't sacrifice in this country. And that's why I don't see an end to this pandemic. It just keeps mutating. It just keeps mutating. Omicron, Delta, just going to keep going.
Yeah.
What
We're
say
going
you?
to run out of, I was just going to say, we're going to run out of the Greek letters here in a second, and with all the variants. Seriously, I think, you know, those that are flying on Delta are actually getting the Delta variant. And I think it's amazing to me, to Mo's point, that we're just not seeing the data, the science. You know, we're so trapped in our own sort of, and entrenched, I should say, in our own sort of political diasporas and our own sort of political agendas that we're not even getting into the actual points of the virus. And Mo is actually absolutely right. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I think several things. I think this country is now exposed for even the young generation, for those that actually want to pay attention to it, has now been exposed that it's highly polarized, number one, that it's highly political, number two, and number three, that it's rooted in a notion of white privilege. And I think that's exactly where Mo was going in terms of Aaron Rodgers. And believe me, I'm a Packer fan, and I hate what Aaron Rodgers did because I just think it reeks of white privilege. I think it in the sense of, I can tell you whatever I need to tell you. I know that I have a platform. I know that people are listening, and I'm still going to tell you whatever I want you to know at that time, regardless of if it's the truth or not. I just think that's extremely arrogant, and I don't know any other platform, people that can do that in this society without retribution. And there really wasn't any retribution. He served a $15,000 fine, and he couldn't play because he had COVID, so he wasn't suspended.
Right.
So I just think that just is extremely, just like, I'm good. And again, being a Packer fan and having that at the core and the crux, it's an interesting dichotomy for me. So I'm trying to work through that. That also being said, I think to answer your question directly, Carlton, I think it's here to stay. I couldn't agree with Mo more. I think it is going to continue to mutate. I think those societies that don't have access, again, this is a lot about access, so you're already seeing a theme here early on in our podcast, that those that don't have access in different societies are actually going to have COVID, and then have COVID again, and have COVID mutate, and then bring it to those that are either vaccinated or unvaccinated. So I think we've got to be extremely mindful of that concept and know exactly what it's doing, not only to the healthcare system, because let's be clear, the healthcare system was almost broken and almost like completely obliterated by COVID.
Right.
When we saw the spike in COVID in March of 2020 and April of 2020, we clearly were not equipped with having that, and I'm complicit in this. We clearly were not equipped to having the right answers and having the aspects that we needed in place to ensure that we were taking care of patients that had COVID. I think the vaccination is a wonderful phenomenon. I think it was done in rapid pace. And by the way, a Black woman actually has a lot to do with that. which is absolutely remarkable. She's actually featured in Time Magazine as one of the people of the year. But that also being said, I understand, going back to exactly how you framed the question, Carlton, I understand where Black people have some trepidation. Not necessarily with the outbreak with the Tuskegee experiment. I mean, that went on for years. We know the whole story with that, and men being intentionally injected with syphilis and trying to study that disease. But I think it's even more so, what do I get when I go to a healthcare institution? Do I get people that understand my plight? Do I get people that look like me? Do they understand? You mentioned 12% of the population, but do they understand that social determinants of health and everything else that I have access to or don't have access to actually impact how I feel? Because my mindset, my mentality is more so how it was going to drive my physicality more so than anything else. So I don't think that we start with that in healthcare, and I think that is a fundamental, absolutely right that we need to. And I think there's certain things that have been in place to change the protocols in this country, but still the policies drive whatever. The large insurance companies, everything else that we're seeing, it's just sort of, I think, getting to how dichotomous this country is in terms of those that have a lot and those that don't have much, and how they access healthcare. So it's here to stay. It's here to stay. And what's here to stay, I say at least for the three to 5 years, COVID is going to be with us and going to be actually changing our lives. And then we're going, and we talk about this in the book, we're going to be feeling the impacts of that for years to come.
All right. You heard it from here, from us, Unsolicited Genius. COVID is here to stay. And even when it dissipates, it's still going to be here. So we'll leave it at that and take a break, and we'll be right back.
Unsolicited genius.